Hey everyone, welcome back to Paint Practice, where I am recording and documenting my practice along the way as I grow in painting. And I think part of what it means to grow in being an artist is putting in the practice, putting in the 1,000 bad paintings before you see the progress that you hope, and you value that and you do that well. And I think another thing that we do is we find the artists that have been doing this for a long time, and particularly ones that love the fundamentals to where it's still a huge joy at a part of what they do. And when you find an artist who can say, this is still my favorite part of painting, you know you're going to learn a lot. So this is kind of a special thing that we're going to do today, that I am really excited about, to sit down and have a conversation with an artist that I have a lot of endearment for, from the beginning parts of my painting journey. So I would love to welcome Anne Blair Brown to Paint Practice.
Hello.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you. I would love, Anne, to hear a little bit about what you're doing right now, maybe where you're from and some things that you're a part of, so we can get to know you a little bit.
Okay. Well, I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I've grown up in Nashville. I've lived here since I was about 5 years old. I was
Oh,
born
okay.
in Rhode Island, but I didn't know much about it. My dad was in the Navy, and anyway, I've been here, and I'm a Southerner. I need the heat.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the most recent wonderful things that happened over the last couple of years is my husband and I purchased an old farmhouse and barn and renovated it into a studio, and it's called Bluebird Hill Retreat.
Oh,
So
that's
when you look at,
wonderful.
yeah, it's very special. We teach workshops there. We get guest instructors, but the reason I mention it for a couple of reasons. First reason is um, it's kind of changed the trajectory of what I paint and almost how
Mm-hmm.
I paint. So to have something so in your heart and not, I've been painting for, since I was 30. I've been painting since I was a little kid, but I've
Yeah.
been painting professionally for about 26 years.
Hmm.
And so, the first thing I used to do is I used to look through magazines because I had no inspiration, and I'd look through food magazines and see pictures of, people sitting and dining, and I would paint that. And, technically that's not legal.
Yeah.
So, and that was a long time ago. I hope no one's listening and knows that I did that. But,
Yeah.
but then I started getting outside to paint, and it was inspired by several people in my area. And once I did that, everything changed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I became a landscape painter, but I learned to translate atmosphere and
Mm-hmm.
color and shadow. And that goes for whether you're looking at an interior or an exterior.
Yeah,
So that was
totally.
the first thing that just changed everything, is painting outside. And um, Bluebird Hill just really affords a lot of that. So I do that and run workshops on my own, and I'm also in several groups. I'm delighted and honored to be a master member of the American Impressionist Society.
Yeah, that's so
Um,
cool.
Such a wonderful organization.
Yeah.
I'm also a signature member of the Oil Painters of America, OPA. I'm
Mm-hmm.
also a member of a group called the Chestnut Group, which is local, very big, wonderful group of plein air painters. And we partner with different organizations like our local parks and lakes, and we do fundraisers for them. And it's a wonderful, wonderful organization, and totally filled with camaraderie. No, nobody's trying to be better than anybody else. There's
Mm-hmm.
beginners and advanced painters and masters, and it's just a great group. But I love that. I love surrounding myself with like-minded people
Yeah.
and other artists. And I teach, but I also learn from just about everybody I meet that's an
Yeah.
artist.
Oh, that's so cool. And I think like that's probably what makes the best kind of teacher, somebody who's willing to keep learning. And you can just tell when somebody is
Yeah.
like that. And I think that's very cool. I wanted to share with you, and when I started painting more seriously and wanted to get better at certain subjects, we have a lot of chickens where we are.
Mhm.
And I wanted to start painting them, and we had some other animals. And my dad took me up to his barn, and he's like, I have this file from Anne Blair Brown that I want you to look at. And he pulled up all your chicken pictures and all your chicken paintings,
Yeah.
and he's like, this is probably the best form of painting a chicken that you could think about right now. And what I loved is it seemed like you took the least amount of strokes to paint an amazing form of a chicken. And you got all of their gestures and how they flock around together, and you could just I thought it was wonderful. So for a while you were the chicken lady to me,
Yeah,
which
I
is so
know.
funny.
It is
It's so
so
funny. I don't even know if you're really known for that or not, because I know you have so many other things that you paint. But in the beginning, it was just I looked over your paintings of chickens for a long time and just loved it, and I learned a lot.
well, it's so funny because okay, so we bought the Bluebird Hill, and our neighbors had chickens, and then they moved away. And long story short, my brother, who thought I was insane for buying that house out about 50 minutes from Nashville, eventually moved out there, and he lives next door right now. And
Oh,
so
okay.
he has chickens. He has
Yeah.
probably, I want to say 10 right now. I'm probably off, but um, and I looked at him one day. I said, "Well, you stole my life. I wanted to. I don't because we don't technically live out there. I was like, you live here and you have chickens."
Oh, that's
And
so funny.
and I asked him, and he's my older brother, and I just did not know this about him. And I looked at him one day and I said, why do you love them so much? I mean, he loves them.
Yeah.
And he looked at me like I was crazy, and he said, they're gorgeous, graceful movement. And I
They
thought,
are.
that's why I
Yeah.
paint them. And
Yeah.
it's not always graceful, but it's comical sometimes.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but yeah, your comment on how I paint them is really light and shadow,
Yep.
and you know, really 3 or 4 strokes can make a little chicken in a smaller painting.
Oh, and just like two strokes for their head, you can see that it's including their comb and their face, and it's done. Like it's not overcomplicated, and you're not painting it to death, and you've created it's just like a beautiful flock of chickens around this beautiful barn. But anyway, it's like such a neat part of the beginning of my painting was looking over your paintings. And I think I looked over more, but I just remember you being one of my favorite artists to just look at and practice over and over again. So
Well, I
that
thank
was
you.
a cool part of the beginning. And so this is why I'm like so excited for the one of the first people for me to interview on the channel would be you, because it makes sense for me that that would be someone I first learned from. So I don't know if you would be willing to just share kind of the beginnings. You did just a little bit, but just
Mhm.
where did your desire for art come from? Maybe who inspired you? Like what did it kind of look like up until now? Like the
Yeah.
beginnings till now?
Well, I'll try to distill it a little bit, but I will say that I was always a very artistic child, and
Hmm.
not directed as such, but I my one of the things that's so comical is we lived on this hill in the woods when I was 7 or so, and I would just look around. I would get in my driveway and make break up sticks and make little log cabin villages, and I just
Hmm.
loved being outside, and I was always making something. And then my mother realized, hey, you can sort of draw. And um, high school, I didn't invest enough time in it, but I thought that's pretty much what I can do. Maybe I'll go to art
Hmm.
school. So I went to the University of Georgia and just
Oh,
was in
okay.
the art school. Now, in semi-typical artist form, I was not the best student. I did not put my nose to the grindstone. I just was like, woo,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
what a pretty town. Maybe I'll skip class today. So I can't tell
Yep.
you that I was driven. I was not driven. And then cut to, leaving college, and I thought, because I wasn't driven, I really didn't have any prospects in art. So I became a caterer and a chef. I moved back to Nashville and did it.
Okay.
So basically that was a wonderful job. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
I have some serious cooking skills,
I bet. Yeah.
just that I learned and applied. And Then one day I just got tired of smelling like onions all day. So I got into some local art shows in Nashville, and the internet happened, and then there I was. And
Yeah.
basically, if anybody out there's like, how do I, gosh, I know I can do this. And it's not about getting, selling yourself, hardcore. It's more about putting the work in, which is playtime,
Hmm.
really, for most of us, and surrounding yourself with artistic people, looking at local art shows, getting a good website, getting a business card, um,
Hmm.
talking to people, reading art books, taking workshops, and it just, if you're authentic about that, and you find a path that makes you a little bit more confident, the easel, it just will start happening.
Hmm. That's very cool. Did you already know from before art school different artists that inspired you, or did that come later when you were already painting and getting
You know,
started?
I probably had a similar, I think anybody who remotely likes art started to like the French Impressionists because that was on
Okay.
posters in our dorm rooms, and
Hmm.
and so of course I loved the French Impressionists. But the thing is,
Yeah.
it's not cliche. I still do.
Yeah.
Um, and if I had to name one artist who just absolutely to this day gobsmacks me is Edward Viard, and
Okay. Yeah.
and just the patterns and everything he created, and um, so that's kind of
Hmm.
the inspiration from way back when. And then I remember being at the University of Georgia, and I graduated, and then I came back with a good friend of mine to see an art exhibit, and I saw this artist, a female artist named Lucy May Stanton, and I'd
Oh,
never
okay.
heard of her. And I mean no offense to anybody, but I do get a little up in arms that female artists are hard to come by, and they were out
Yep.
there, they just weren't talked about.
Yeah,
So
they
yeah,
were. Yeah.
yeah. So she was kind of known for these little miniature paintings she did, but there's this one painting called A Paris Garden, and it's a little 9 by 12, and it's just a beautiful painting. It was the first time I looked at something and I said, you don't have to copy what you see. You can make up beautiful colors and shapes and texture. And
Yeah.
I read the little card, and it said that she traveled to Paris, and I thought, oh,
Yeah.
I got to get out of this, you know, the southeast of America, which I love, but I got to go look at other stuff. And that's when I started traveling.
Oh, where did you travel?
Just, well, and I mean, just by default. And um, I found myself traveling to Paris for various
Oh, you
reasons.
did. Okay.
Yeah. And this is all very serendipitous. I'm not rich, and I'm not well traveled, there was none of that. It was just serendipity led me to certain places. Very
Yeah.
lucky to have done that. And the Paris trips kind of started me painting restaurant interiors, which is a subject that got me noticed.
Oh,
And
cool.
I don't want to be pigeonholed for a subject, but it was exciting to me, and it was what was in front of me.
Yeah.
That is to say, now what's in front of me is chickens.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
falling down barns, and landscapes and flowers, and anything that gives me joy in life is what gives me joy to paint.
Yeah.
Farmers markets,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So the
Yeah. That's
inspiration
beautiful.
from a tangible, for people here with us on Earth. There are so many local artists in our area. It's something's in the water. We're very blessed with some fabulous artists, but one artist in particular, Dawn Whitelaw. We've just had this sort of long distance. She lives about 30 minutes from me, but we're just sort of like, I watch her, and I say, you know what? If she wouldn't do this, I'm not doing it, because
Hmm.
her work ethic, her authenticity, um, she's just the real deal. And so I've told her that. I said, you don't know this, but you're my mentor.
Oh,
So,
she probably
and
loves
I
that.
don't mimic her style, and I don't, but I mimic her ability to maneuver this life with complete and utter grace.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
so cool.
And then I could go on and on about who inspires me, but I would
Yeah.
say locally, and as I came up, she's somebody that I watched.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I would love to look into her and see more about her. I don't haven't heard of her, but
Yeah,
that's
and
really cool.
you don't hear about her a lot. If you A lot of people know who she is, but she's not out there marketing herself. She's out there painting
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
growing, and she's my mother's age, so she's still out there learning and growing, and it's an inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like what I really appreciate about where you've come now is, I don't know, we can talk more about this in a little bit, but I'm seeing like you can become more and more loose with your painting. You can become more loose than you think you are.
Well,
And so I love to practice what you do and paying less attention to detail in the beginning and being more loose up front. And I really also like your color palette. I
thank
think, yeah, and I really appreciate how you use bright color without being overwhelming, or just your use of it's done really, really well.
thank you.
One of my favorite paintings that you've done, and I don't know the name of it, but there's a barn in the background, and in the foreground there's some hanging linens that are colorful linens.
Yeah, I would
It's
like
on
to.
Instagram. I just loved the
Was it
linen.
like a laundry line?
It was a laundry line.
Okay,
Yeah.
that might have been a painting from our farmhouse where we have an old smokehouse. Are
Oh,
you sure
okay,
it
cool.
might have been a smokehouse and not a barn,
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
And outside it looks like an old falling down smokehouse, but we turned it into a bunkhouse and it's this beautiful interior. But there was a laundry line and it was
Yeah.
pretty colorful but balanced. Yeah, that might
Yeah.
be it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I appreciate that because it's very like, this is just normal life type of stuff that you paint to make really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think I had heard you say, like, what you love about the South. I heard this you say in a different interview, but what you love about the South is like the grit
Yeah.
of the area or how people live and getting to kind of like capture that in a painting. And as someone also in the South, I feel the same way, and I've said very similar things. I just like a nice wheelbarrow of flowers. You
Yeah.
know, it's not in a pretty pot, it's in a really cool wheelbarrow, and you just see it. And I just laughed when I hear you talk about like light hitting a trash can just the right way, and you feel like you want to paint it. Just that really resonated with me. One thing is, so as I'm getting better um, with art and trying to grow, what do you find valuable to practice the most as someone who's kind of in the middle of their journey or in the beginning of their journey with painting? What is probably the best use of our time for practice? Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Okay.
My initial response to that is sketching.
Okay.
And when I say sketching, I don't mean perfect drawings with pencil and erasers. I mean seeing shapes and the the brain to eye to thing coordination is super important to be an expressive and spontaneous painter.
Okay.
And so if you spend all your time and the sketching, I think, let me backtrack. If you spend all your time laboring over this needs to be right here and I need to draw
Yeah.
that perfectly and then I'm going to go over here and that's going to be perfect, you might find it's all in the wrong place and you've wasted your time. So I like to sketch, not to draw perfectly, but to do very loose contour drawings. Sometimes I do tons of them, sometimes I do four. Then I know the subject a little better, and my little, artist brain that is very visual is kind of snapshotting.
Okay.
Then I like to take out grayscale markers and maybe fill in a couple of them with just maybe four values and start to really see what's dark, what's light, and what's midtone.
Oh,
You would
cool.
not
Okay.
believe how doing that for 10 minutes would change the trajectory of your painting. And the more you
Mm.
do it, and the more it's a practice, the more you see inspiration faster. And so it's all a symbiotic. And so just sketching to me translates to observation.
Yeah, that
So
makes a lot of
just looking at
sense.
something, say, "Oh, that's pretty. I'm going to paint it." That's fine. If you don't have a lot of mileage, it might not go well.
Man, that's really good advice. I think like my dad's been trying to tell me that for a while.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry about trying to just finish a painting,
Right.
fill up sketchbooks and do a lot of bad stuff first. So I think that's actually really good advice. My biggest struggle is I just want to finish a whole painting. And when I see something, I do just kind of want to paint it.
Yeah. Well,
So
and then you wonder what the definition of finish is.
yeah.
And when I'm teaching, so many times I see students kind of follow my process, and because the end result is not near, it feels great and it looks great. Then they start
Mm,
sometimes it gets they're doing so well, I said, "That's really good." Then they get excited and they wanna perfect it, and then they start drawing and tightening, so the definition of finish can be way before you think it is, and you'd
yeah,
be surprised what people's, brains will accept as finish if
yeah,
it's done well. And
yeah.
so, like, for me, my journey is giving less and less information with more and more impact.
Yes, I heard you say that in something else, and,
Yeah, that's
I
my
had told
biggest goal.
you before my daughter and I had listened to you do something, and we both really liked that, with just less information with more impact. That really does describe a lot of your paintings, and it is amazing, like, what
Yeah.
our eye will just recognize with the important information, which is yeah, which is where I would really like to go. So, do you think, like, this kinda ties in a little bit with and what I mean by that is less information, more impact. Did you talk about like the 40 brush strokes or something like that somewhere else where that felt important to you for students to kind of work at?
Yeah. Yeah. So, along the way, I took workshops, and I remember thinking, and I took from some really good people, and I got usually for me, I'm like, I want to just know this. And
Mhm.
so I can name like the thing I took from each person. And when I say took, I mean gleaned and put into my own process. And um, during this time, people would say, well, you need to see values. And a lot of those people didn't tell me how. And you need to
Yeah.
see big basic shapes. And a lot of people didn't break that down for me. And then
Yeah.
I took a workshop, like a quick 2-day workshop, from a fabulous artist and good friend, Colin Page. And he did this 40 brushstroke thing. And this was many, many years ago. And it was one of the times I thought, okay, when I'm teaching, this is a way I can get people to feel something different.
Yeah.
It's one thing to just paint and say, go do that. Nobody can do that. I can't, if I could do that, I would watch a video of my favorite painter and go try to.
Mm.
So for me, I told him, I said, I always give you credit when I do it. And he goes, oh, I just yanked that off the internet. It was probably from this artist. But so having said that, I did morph it into my own way. But doing limited brushstroke paintings, seeing limited shapes in a limited value pattern
Mm.
with a limited palette is going to get you to a freer place. It's going to get you to, a place where you stop looking at the stuff and you start thinking about principles.
Yeah.
And I think Monet said it too, like when you stop naming things is when your painting gets better.
Oh, it's so funny. Yeah.
So the limited brush stroke, and I do many iterations of that. Sometimes I do like a 30-minute study and then a 20-minute stroke next to it, but people find themselves using their hands the way they normally wouldn't. They find themselves
Yeah.
holding the brush the way they normally wouldn't. They learn that, oh my goodness, I need more paint on my palette. Oh, and I
Hmm.
need a medium. Oh, and I need fatter brushes. So all these things I
Yeah.
want people to do to get looser are encapsulated in these exercises.
Yeah. That's cool. I wanted to apply it once I already had a painting like halfway. I thought I'm gonna apply this while I need to block in their shirt. I'm
Yeah.
like, just apply the 40 brush strokes. And it did make a big difference that I didn't overwork it. It was very challenging to think through every brush stroke so that
Yeah.
you were
Yeah.
getting to like number 30 and you're like, oh, I'm really wanting to think through the rest of the
Yeah.
brush strokes to make this look like a shirt.
Well, and
So
I do that. I walk the walk, and I do these for demos, and I do them all the time. And it's tiring because you're thinking, and a lot of people would say, well, if you're thinking so hard while you're painting, isn't that not fun? But the point is, and I've said this before, is to slow you down to speed you up.
yeah, yeah,
So the more you know, do that, if you don't have the mileage of thinking, then it's hard to be spontaneous.
yeah,
And then at one point you will, if you follow a certain path of exercises and, whatever your favorite artist is, if it's me, whatever, you
yeah.
find yourself just one day going, I don't even need to do that one thing anymore. I get it
It's
now.
just
And I'm,
coming
I'm
natural.
intuitive about
Hmm.
it. And that's why people ask me, "Well, do you still use that little red film when it's called a value comp, and that red film kind of desaturates everything visually?" And
Mhm.
I'm like, "Actually, I don't, because I see it
Yeah.
now." But so these little tools and exercises are stepping stones to that spontaneous style that we all want.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Tools are helpful. And it's really great when things become intuitive.
yeah,
Yeah.
I say,
Yeah.
the practice and the drawing and the seeing values before you mix color gets you a little bit more confident, and then that confidence leads to that spontaneity, and then that spontaneity leads
Mhm.
to intuition. So it's
Yeah.
a fun path to be on.
Yeah. So I've been doing a lot of the things that I love a lot is figures and faces. And my dad, as you know, does landscapes primarily. And I would love to do more landscapes for practice. I find plein air to be so fun, but a little intimidating. And I don't know if you have any like quick advice on how to make some of these things a little simpler. Like, what are some simple things to think about when you feel pressure to beat the light or pressure to get everything quickly before things change? That's
Yeah.
kind of the things that I can feel a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I would just say don't worry about drawing perfectly. I call it color notes.
Okay.
And again, a lot of people say, "Well, you're telling me to sketch before I paint, and if I do that outside, I'm going to lose the light." Here's
Yeah.
here's the kicker. When you sketch as a practice, eventually it becomes faster. You see faster, you see what you want to paint faster, you build around that thing faster. So that's a great stepping stone. So it's taking you forever. You probably still need to do that and let it take forever so you can learn.
Okay.
But the second thing that will get easier outside and that will help is um, doing some sort of little underpainting. Which, if you do like a thin tonal underpainting,
Okay.
and my method is sort of depending on the medium I'm using because it's not great with acrylic, but with oil, I tend to stain and then wipe out lights and then build sort of a dark pattern around very thinly. And guess what happens? You've blocked in your shadow shape,
Okay. And it
and then you
stays.
paint that, and as the light changes, you don't give that any props.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
drawing and seeing what you want to paint, and then putting sort of a wash of the scene on, and locking in shadow shapes is a great step. Sometimes when you first learn that, people get too wet and they slip and slide and too much
Yeah.
paint, whatever. When you get a handle on that, that is a tried and true way to not chase the light, is to get the scene rendered, not even
Okay.
rendered, but masked in. And I also pre-mix a little bit of color. And
Okay.
again, you might think, "Oh my God, all the stuff you're doing, and how are you even getting a painting sort of finished?" It's because it's intuitive, and it's
Mhm.
like cooking or playing the piano. I know what I'm doing. I know where everything is. Um, spice here and a key there. And if the canvas is covered and I see shadow and light and my colors look pretty decent, I stop.
Okay.
And
That's great.
that's plein air painting for me,
Yeah.
because it's not to me about creating a museum worthy painting. It's about um, understanding and then being able to translate that.
Yeah. I feel like I have a long way to get to the point where I can feel that when I'm painting, which is
Yeah,
like, oh, I'm done. You can stop here and feel confident to not paint this to death. I would love to practice more of what you were just explaining before, just moving on to any more detail and being okay wasting some canvases for some
yeah,
tonal practice and
yeah.
those beginning stages. So yeah, well, that's great. Do you have a favorite subject matter? You paint so many different things. I mean, not so many different things, but enough, you know.
Um, you know, I'll say this. I said this at the beginning, and I don't want to be cryptic, but I can't say it's chickens or it's flowers. I will say that what gives me joy in life gives me joy in painting.
Yeah.
So there is a huge preponderance of pots of flowers on a patio, or
Yeah.
chickens in a barn, or a falling down barn, or um, you know, farmers market. I love summer is my favorite, and I love it. I love architecture. I love street scenes. I love town.
Mhm.
So, and there's other things I love too, but, and I got known for interiors. And once I get good at something, I tend to move on.
Hmm.
And that's confounding to gallery owners, but,
Yeah.
I want to grow. So if you paint foundational elements and principles and don't worry about the subject, everything is a painting. And I
Hmm.
think that's a fun way to go through life and
Yeah.
not have to get on a plane and fly to Tuscany and paint poppies is something I always say,
Yeah.
like, which is also awesome and pretty, but
Yeah.
you know, you can paint light on a trash can and make it beautiful. I'll tell you a secret. It's almost physically impossible for me to keep repeating something just to make money.
Hmm.
In it, I become wary of something or think if it becomes shtick,
Yeah.
it's not even that I'm just smart enough to stop doing it. They start to stink
Yeah.
and I can't do it. And I think that's divine intervention of this isn't you. Don't do this for money because every time I think of money, I don't do a very good painting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm starting to feel that creep in for me too, where I still love painting people and faces, but I'm feeling the itch of like, let's bring in some still life because you were very drawn to that, and let's get good at that and things like that. And I actually painted in Nashville, not Nashville, but in Pigeon Forge with my dad a few weeks ago and did
Oh yeah.
plein air. And I was just like, I really do like this. I am okay trying to get better at this. So I think to end our time, maybe one question that maybe all artists at some point have to ask themselves is, would you rather accidentally sip your paint thinner? Or would you want a bunch of paint smeared on your face and you're in front of buyers of your art?
I would want the paint smeared on my face.
Oh, it is scary to sip the paint thinner. It is honestly one of my fears when I sit down
Well,
with
and you know, I'm
any
totally
drink.
water soluble. I use water soluble oils now,
Okay, yeah,
and I
that
use
makes it better.
acrylics. But still, having said that, I have very strong taste buds, and I think if you have paint all over you, you look arty, and I think
You
that can
do.
be cool.
That's
Now,
true.
I keep very clean when I paint, but if there was a smear on, that would be preferable to toxic stuff in my body.
Yeah. And it would make sense to them that you
Right,
have paint on your face.
right.
Yeah, sometimes when I have iced coffee, it's the same jar as my paint thinner. It's the same mason jar, and so that's silly, but
Yeah,
I'll dunk my paintbrush in there on accident plenty of times.
I've done
But
that. I've done that to a very expensive glass of Chardonnay. And
oh no.
I was just years ago, I was out and I thought, well, this will be fun. I'm in California, so I'll have a little Chardonnay
Oh, that's so
and I
funny.
put my brush in it and I thought, I just don't probably need to drink when I'm painting anyway.
Nope.
So
Nope. It's ruined
I
now.
thought
That's
it
so
sounded
funny.
fun, but something's gonna go. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Man,
but
I just like really appreciate your time just for someone who's trying to
pleasure.
grow and get better. And I just really admire where you're going and
Thank you.
the journey that you took to get where you are today. I think it's really
Thank you.
honorable.
I appreciate you. I really do. It means a lot to me and my time. It's talking to people like you about art and people who are passionate is
Hmm.
a wonderful use of time. So I appreciate
Yeah.
your asking me to do this. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. And we'll leave, your stuff down below
Okay.
in the description of where your website is, where they can find you on Instagram, and anything else that you want me to put there. The viewers can be checking those things out. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And thank you, Anne, for your time.
Thank you. Loved it.